name is Pamela Cuther, and welcome back. Again, in this series, we will learn geometry, where we will have a different focus each week. This week, we will continue our focus on SOL G.8a, the Pythagorean theorem. Today's focus will be to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for a missing leg in a right triangle. Before we get started, you will need a few supplies: your interactive notebook or a few sheets of paper, a pencil or other writing utensil, and the Desmos calculator, either as an app on your phone or mobile device, or you may click the link in the attached presentation. Here are the answers to yesterday's practice problems. Please take time to check your answers. Now we are ready to look at our instructional video, which will explain our skill for today. Before we start, please open the notes. Copy the notes and fill in the blanks as you watch the video. The video is also linked in the presentation.
Maybe unknown one. The one on this side here. So this problem will be trying to find B. Now C is the hypotenuse. That's the length of the longest side of my right triangle. This side here. So C. How do we make that from B and C? Let's take the series and plug it into the Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to B squared, which is B squared. C squared.
Now that you've learned our skill for today, we will look at some model examples. The first model example is a simple triangle. Notice that we have one of the legs and the hypotenuse, and we must find the other leg. The first thing I will do is write down my formula, just as she explained in the video. I will plug in my 15 for one of the legs. It can be A or B, it doesn't matter. C, however, is the hypotenuse and must be 17, as that is the slanted side. It's also the side across from the right angle. After plugging in those values, my next step would be to square those values. 15 squared is 225. 17 squared is 289. Because I want to get x by itself, I must move the 225 to the other side by doing the opposite operation, subtraction. Then I would get x squared equals 64. Remember, my last step is to get rid of that square by doing the square root. That's the opposite. So x is equal to 8 centimeters. Let's look at our model example number 2. In this word problem, we know that Miss Green tells you that a right triangle has a hypotenuse of 13 and a leg of 5. She asks you to find the other leg of the triangle. So I drew a right triangle. You can draw yours however you like, as long as it has a right angle. And make sure you put the numbers attached to the right side of the triangle. So the hypotenuse 13 can only go in one place, the slanted side. The leg of 5 could go in either position. As usual, I write down my equation, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I fill in my numbers into the appropriate locations. Remember that 5 can be either a or b, but 13 has to be c because that is the hypotenuse. My next step would be to square the numbers, and then because I'm trying to get x by itself, I must subtract the 25 to do the opposite operation and move it over. I get x squared equals 144. My last step would be to find the square root on both sides. X equals 12. Let's see if you can try one on your own. Remember, the first step is to always write down your formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Decide which side you have. Do you have A, B, or C? You're always going to have two of them. Here we have a leg that helps form the right angle, and we have the hypotenuse, which is the slanted side or the side across from the right angle. Let's look at the solution. I plugged in 12 for A. Remember, 12 could be either A or B. It is one of the legs, so it can be A or B. But 15 has to be C because it is the hypotenuse. After plugging in those values, I square them. 12 squared is 144. 15 squared is 225. My next step would be to subtract 144 from both sides. Remember, my goal is to get the x by itself. After I have x squared equals 81, my last step is to find the square root on both sides, remembering that the square root is the opposite of squaring. My answer is x equals 9. Here's the word problem. See if you can draw a diagram and solve this word problem. The word problem tells us that we have a suitcase, which is in the shape of a rectangle. Here are some details. It is 24 inches long, and the diagonal is 30 inches long. What is the width of the suitcase? Let's look at the solution. Notice in my diagram, I drew a suitcase. I labeled the length 24, the width is x, and the diagonal is 30 inches. After I attached those numbers to the proper sides, I wrote my formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I plugged in those numbers. Remember that 24 is a leg and can be either a or b. 30 is the hypotenuse, and so therefore it must be C. I square those numbers. 24 squared is 576. 30 squared is 900. I subtract the 576 from both sides because remember, I'm trying to get x by itself. So that gives me x squared equals 324. My last step, because I want x, not x squared, is to do the square root on both sides, giving me an answer of x equals 18 inches. This concludes our lesson for today. During your remaining work time, please complete the practice problems and the online practice. The answers will be in tomorrow's module. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.